Larry is a fourth-generation San Franciscan, which for those of us who came here in 1969 is amazing, because there were no such things as second-generation San Franciscans when we got here in the late 60s. Larry and a group of owners put together in 1992 a coalition to buy the Giants and save them from moving to Tampa Bay. I was actually in Tampa Bay at that time on business, and the Tampa Bay was celebrating they were getting the Giants. I was there at that time. So Larry is owed a huge debt of gratitude, which I assume he gets all the time from San Franciscans, from saving the Giants for San Francisco. And those of us, a little part of this, would like to thank you for saving us from going to games at Candlestick Park, which I spent a lot of time doing, and I don't have to do anymore at all. So January of 2012, Larry became the CEO of the Giants. He's been a key strategist and negotiator for the team, beginning with the Barry Bonds signing in '92. He chairs the Major League Baseball's Long-Term Strategic Planning Committee, and he is essentially Mr. San Francisco. I mean, he's on the board of directors of KQED, the San Francisco Committee on Jobs, the Bay Area Council, Comcast Sports and Boys and Girls Club of the Pacific Northwest, and basically I left here in '83 and you became Mr. San Francisco in my absence. So while I walk over to do this interview, let me ask you the first question. Can you please tell us a little bit about this media and entertainment company you run?
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Welcome, everybody. Full disclosure, actually, Steve mentioned I'm a Berkeley guy. I'll try to hold back here sitting at Stanford. Actually, when Cal is out of it, which we now increasingly are in whatever sport, I'm a Stanford fan. So, and I have some of my best friends went to Stanford. Isn't that what they say? Yeah. So the San Francisco Giants, everybody talks about the business. What is the business of the San Francisco Giants? And, and I know a lot of you are economists and all, and it's interesting because they talk about the economic value of a team. There's a lot of qualitative factors that go into it, and some quantitative for sure. But what we see ourselves in is really in 6, 7, 8 different businesses right now. For sure, we're in the business of winning baseball games. We need to do that. Right? So that's mission one. If we don't do that, then other things may not fall into place. But increasingly, we're in the content business in a very big way, delivering fresh content to multiple platforms, content with a predictable rating and with a following, which in today's world is tough to do in a 500-channel universe. How do you find something? I used to work at CBS in New York, and we'd have all these shows come through, and you got to pick shows for prime time. Well, you know what? It's a 1 in 50, maybe a 2% chance that your show is going to hit. But with sports content, it's sort of a proven audience. So you're in the content business, you're in the technology business, so we can get into that, and lots of different ways to allow people to connect with you. We're in the customer service business. Doesn't matter how good you are, if the experience at the ballpark or the experience around the Giants isn't what it needs to be, you fail, you fall down. We're in the increasingly in the real estate business. We have an enormous project that is developing 27 acres, really what's becoming the corner of Main and Main, and right in what was our ballpark parking, which is now going to be replaced by structured parking and a big development right down on Mission Bay. And then one of my favorite businesses, it's not really a business, one of my favorite pursuits is we're in the community business. We're in the community service business. We wear San Francisco across our chest. And a lot of people perceive that we actually are publicly sort of a public utility. They call us up, hey, I'd like 20 tickets tomorrow. I have a nonprofit. And they, sort of like we're the symphony or the opera or whatever. And that's good. I like that. We embrace that. And we do a lot in the community. We ask each player to pick a nonprofit and donate time and resources to that nonprofit. And one of my favorite things about the job, if not the most favorite, the favorite thing is to walk on a Tuesday night in the upper deck or a Sunday afternoon and see mothers and sons and fathers and daughters and colleagues and friends interacting, because that's really the business we're in. We're in the happy business. We're in the fun business, and that's what we're about.
Okay. There are not only economists in the audience, by the way. There are a lot of investors, a lot of Silicon Valley people, and all of us, all of those people in this room like that, are used to rooting for corporations. But typically we root for corporations who we own their stocks and bonds. Okay, now, we don't typically just root for corporations. So you're in a little bit of a different situation where you actually have a large number of people who root for you even though they don't own your stocks and bonds. And so my question for you, as an avowedly huge baseball fan, but also as a business guy, is what is your objective? Other corporations here maximize long-term shareholder value. They'll put it in different ways, but they're maximizing long-term shareholder value. Are you maximizing discounted present value of long-term shareholder value? Are you maximizing the discounted victories over the long term? Are you maximizing championships over the long term? What is your goal?
I think you'd find if you sat in one of our board meetings, it's not that different, Steve, than a public company, a publicly traded company. In fact, the way we run it is we try to simulate a publicly traded company. So we have quarterly board meetings, we look for growth, we look for financial return, we look for ultimately for valuation. And in some ways, we're really no different in that sense than a microcosm of a company like a Disney, in the sense that we're in the brand building business. If we build the brand in a strong way, in a successful way, and it has all those ingredients I mentioned. So winning is part of it, but it's not the only thing. I can give you lots of examples of teams that won that sub-optimized. I can give you lots of examples of teams that had a great image and did all the other brand building things well and still sub-optimized. So you have to kind of do it all. You try to do it all. But we're in the brand building business if you're looking for sort of a one line. And we do have shareholders. We have 35 owners of the team. It's a group that came together. It was a great thing because it was a group that came together 23 years ago, as you mentioned, in 1992, when the team had one foot out the door to Tampa. And it was born out of civic commitment. And the people, a lot of you in the room know some of our investors, and they were big forces in our community that refused to see what San Francisco endure what happened to New York in 1958, when the Brooklyn Dodgers left and went to LA and the New York Giants came to San Francisco. It can be devastating to a community, and it can affect the quality of life, and can affect a lot of things. I remember getting letters really and hearing stories on both ends of the spectrum. I would get letters when the Giants were threatening to move and almost did move from elderly people, shut-ins, and they write that, following the Giants, listening to radio and television broadcasts, it's the background music of my summer, my spring and my summer. It's what I do. It's what I love. What do I do without it? And then on the other side, kids that would go to clinics where we'd have Giants stars come and talk to the kids and say, I look up to Will Clark or Barry Bonds or give whatever player, and they're really not leaving, are they? And it's devastating. So in some ways, we're more than a business in that sense, but we have to run it like a business, and we try very hard to do that. And but knowing that the community work we do is, we have a sort of a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility with our public, because we are the San Francisco Giants and we have the name of a community, on our chest to perform beyond what maybe a normal business or a standard business located in the area would do. 59
years ago, the Dodgers and Giants left New York, and there's still people pretty bitter about that and still wanting to say it's not so. So
that's right.
I get that. By the way, thank you for the invitation to the board meeting. I appreciate that.
I didn't say we were the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, okay, right. So
it is actually publicly held, the Green Bay Packers.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I know, I was saying the Green Bay Packers actually are publicly held.
Right.
It's really the only, it's a master limited partnership. It's the only example of a sports franchise that's publicly held in 3-4 major sports.
A number of the people, whether they're CEOs or run businesses in the room, including myself, have experience with you're managing different groups of people with different objectives and different characteristics. and yet you try to create a common culture, a common corporate goal of some kind. To me, that's incomprehensible for you, because the characteristics of what you're looking for on the field and the characteristics of what you're looking for in the front office are so totally different, yet I'm guessing you're going to tell me it's not that different, so I'm curious how you pull those together.
Not that different. But I think, intuitively you would absolutely think it's different, because you have ball players, and I'm not embarrassed to say it's the way it's our world. The average player on the Giants, our payroll is $170 million, and 25 players, so what's that? 25 divided by into 170. So the average player is making about, what, $7 million a year.
Right. And you've got minor leaguers who are reportedly making less than minimum wage, if you calculate it. Right. So.
And then you have front office people that are working, in the way, sort of in what a customary business would employ, the way customary business would employ people, which is not everyone making $7 million, give or take.
Right.
So instinctively, you'd think it was very different, but it really isn't, because in the end, the common thread is passion, and passion for the organization, and passion for getting the job done, and passion really, what we found in the recent years with the team on the field and the team off the field, is passion to make the community proud. And what we found is that the players, we not predicted to win anything this year. We weren't predicted last year to win anything. We weren't predicted in the other years to win anything. We'll come back to that. But the players, they're dedicated to working with each other, and it sounds trite, but they do have this bond, and Bruce Bochy inculcates it, our manager and the coaches and the people that work with them in the front office. On the other side, on the business side, and everybody that works in the front office, they have a passion to make the Giants, succeed in the community. And what does that mean? To them, it might mean selling out games. We have 330 consecutive sellouts, which is the longest sellout streak in baseball. We've sold out 4 years in a row. We have, a tremendous effort on the sponsorship side. We have this big $3 billion real estate project going now. We've got a lot going, and these people are passionate because they have a feel for the Giants. They're not all fourth generation San Franciscans, but they're here. And I have to say, on the business side, we have different kinds of currency. We're not, because we're privately held, we don't have a lot of stock, we don't have stock options. We don't have that kind of currency. But we have something that I think in some ways is more important, and that's psychic income. People are very proud. And we had, in our parade, all three parades, the first people walking in the parade were the ballpark workers in uniform. And so 1 million people watched their usher, their security guard, their ticket seller, ticket taker, vendor march in the parade. Those kinds of things are memories that last.
The branding for San Francisco, where's your low A affiliate? I didn't look this up.
We have Salem, Kaiser, and Augusta.
Okay, so say Augusta. How do you take a kid from Montana, who's now playing in Augusta, and inculcate him with the San Francisco community passion?
That's a good question. I think that it goes around sort of the culture of the clubhouse, and it's his fellow players that he comes up through the system with. And then over time, it becomes a San Francisco thing. And I don't want to mislead people. I mean, a lot of the players, especially the young players, don't live in San Francisco year-round, but they live in San Francisco during the baseball season. That's 7 months. And some have their kids in school here, some don't. But it's sort of around the culture of the team. And when I say San Francisco, it's the fans, and being able to see 41,000 every night to come and root them on. I mean, they want to do something. They want to reciprocate.
I can see, I'm being a little argumentative here,
yeah,
sorry, but I can see sort of when Joe Panic gets brought up in July or August that, yay, I'm a part of this and I'm passionate about it. But when Joe Slivovitz on your AA team gets traded to Houston, and he knew there was always a chance that could happen.
Right.
I wonder if he's a little reserved about that passion until he actually gets into the stadium.
No, I think it takes time. I mean, it has to be, there's a culture. I was just in Phoenix the last few days, and we have a lot of training that goes, we have in the minor league camp, we have tons of pictures. We have guys, in fact, I attended a session yesterday that was moderated by Joey Amalfitano, who was a longtime Giants coach, Dodger coach previous to that. And on the panel were Orlando Cepeda, Will Clark, Jeffrey Leonard, who else? Dave Dravecki, so 4 longtime Giants. And they talked about what it meant to be a Giant. And somebody raised their hand and they asked Jeffrey Leonard, who played in the '87 team that went to the playoffs, what was your best day as a major leaguer? What was your best day with the Giants? And he said, the first day I put on my uniform. So it takes time, and I don't want to be, be unrealistic about it. Not every player is going to fit in. We try to have capture the players that do, and we do a fair amount of due diligence around that in the scouting and in the acquisition, and we're certainly not perfect.
Okay. Contrast your Giants philosophy, Moneyball philosophy, with Brad Pitt's. I mean, Billy Beane's.
It's funny. I was just at an analytics conference today in Phoenix this morning, and I'm very proud to say to a group like this of sabermetrics people in baseball and who are really focused on analytics that we're a hybrid, and I think that for us it's the right route. And when I say a hybrid, there's a continuum of teams that are really focused on the analytics and go by the analytics, by the lion's share of their evaluation is analytics, to the teams that are more scouting oriented and more quote old school. But when you think about it, analytics can tell you a lot, but it can't tell you everything. Analytics can't tell you the character of the player, can't really get into body type, not just body type today, but what's the body going to look like 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. And analytics maybe can, maybe can't tell you how you perform in clutch situations or under pressure. Those are just 3 examples. On the other hand, if you just do the scouting and you don't marry it to the analytics, I think there's big holes. And the analytics are so advanced now. So we have a quietly, not exposed to Brad Pitt or Aaron Sorkin, we have quietly a group that works very hard on analytics and has for quite a while.
That raises a couple of questions in my mind. As almost a former student of mine, are you more comfortable with the sabermetrics or with the scouts? Or are you now comfortable with both?
I think it's both. I mean, look, the movie Moneyball and the book kind of pitted them against each other. I don't think they need to be pitted against each other. Right. I have seen times, and and I have to give a lot of credit to Bruce Bochy and the coaches, because this is all great. The analytics are great, but if they're not implemented, it doesn't mean anything. And we've heard stories over the years of managers, and I can think of one that I heard a story about, that with a team that did a fair amount of analytics, it's not Oakland, fair amount of analytics, and they delivered sort of suggestions to the manager, the team's manager, and the team's manager basically ignored it because he didn't believe in it. Bruce Bochy, who has been in the game a long time, he leads the active managers in wins, so he could easily be old school. He takes the printouts and the reads, and we simulate everything. We simulate optimize the starting lineup. Who should you hit first? Who should you put in, not put in? And Bruce looks at it, and he doesn't always go with it, but he considers it. But he has other things to consider too, and he knows things that the analysts don't know. He may know that somebody's going through a rough time at home. He may know a player has an injury, but we don't want to disclose it because it'll expose a weakness when he's up at bat against the pitcher. I mean, so there's a lot that goes into it that's nuanced, and so the execution of it and the implementation of it is really important. I'll say one other thing about analytics, and again, really important. But if you get, I think, too much of a megaphone out there about the analytics, the players sort of kind of think like it's out of their hands. And think about that. So somebody's kind of profiled you, and you're going to be a 270 hitter, and you're profiling this and profiling that. Well, we want to empower the players to feel like they can do things that are well beyond their analytical projections. So we want them to feel like they're on our team because we think they can excel well beyond what people are projecting.
Those of us who are Stratomatic fans, I don't know if you're a Stratomatic fan or not, but who have done thousands or millions of simulations on lineup composition have pretty much come to the conclusion it's random, and so you got to rely on Bruce Bochy.
Yeah, it is. It's
How
judgment.
do you compete with the Dodgers' infinite resources?
I think it seems like it is infinite,
Yeah.
first of all, so I'll agree on the premise. The great thing about our sport, and I think most sports, is that it's an art, not a science, and there is not a direct correlation between spending and winning. And we've seen that in many permutations. This year, the Dodgers will spend about, about $80 to $90 million more than us on players. If you go back 5 years before Guggenheim owned the Dodgers, when Frank McCourt owned the Dodgers, we spent $40 or $50 million more than the Dodgers. And look, I mean, does it give you a better chance of winning if you spend more? Perhaps. But there's so many X factors that go into it. So we'll get too hung up on it. As I say, we run it like a business, so our payroll, which is going to be about $170 million, allows us to be profitable, allows us to, function well, allows us to have, and that's the starting payroll, allows us to have the flexibility to add players during the season. The one thing in baseball that isn't always recognized is your team in April is almost never your team in September. Right. Okay, so those of you who have followed the Giants, each of the years we have won. In 2010, we added Cody Ross, Pat Burrell, Javi Lopez, Ramon Ramirez. In 2012, we added Hunter Pence, Marco Scutaro. Last year, we added Jake Peavy, Joe Panik. So the adjustments you make along the way are almost as important as the starting point.
Most things change. Right?
They change. There's an adage in baseball, 162-game season. The first 50 games, see what you got. The next 50 games, make your adjustments. And the final 62 games, play like hell.
You're now the chair of the Long-Term Planning Commission for Major League Baseball, and we know what your long-term plan is for the Giants, and that's win the World Series every even-numbered year and refill in every odd-numbered year, so that everybody else gets a chance. But what is the challenges you see as chairman of the Long-Term Planning Commission for Major League Baseball? Because that's not about the Giants. That's about that's about the industry.
Exactly. And there are a lot of issues. I think that there are some really interesting issues that we're now in the nexus of in the media world, the media digital world, as to where do we go with our content. So do we, there's over the top, there's the cable bundle. How's baseball best served in packaging its content and presenting it? We know that the young fans that we've got to capture are consuming media differently. And my son who is here, and I have two sons in college, one of them's here today, they're not necessarily going home to the big set and plugging into this big over-the-top, it's not over-the-top, this big cable package, and they're finding a game on a computer, maybe in the library, maybe in the dorm, maybe in the wherever, and that's how they're consuming it. So how do we get games to fans, to fit into the generational changes that we're seeing? Then on the baseball side of it, we've lived with 162 games for a lot of years now, but originally it was 154. Is it too many games? Should we change the postseason around? Can you go back to 154 games? What is the structure of the postseason like? Do we like that? A big issue is gaming and gambling. I mean, should we allow that? You look at startups. You look at one way to connect with the young people, and I don't know if you are familiar with these games, DraftKings and FanDuel, that are out there, and kids are playing them, and they're basically one-day fantasy games that they have baseball applications. Is it a form of gambling? Should we allow it? Should we encourage it? Is there a problem? So these are big issues, but to stay current and to compete in a 500-channel world and to compete in a digital world, we need to get at those. Are just a few examples.
And baseball forever has been father-son, passed on. For me, it was my uncle and to his son, and he would basically, if my uncle were to come back today and go to a ball game, he'd be totally bewildered. Because it really is a media and entertainment business now, to your point.
It is, but I like the fact that the geometry of the game,
Right.
and the game is still 60 feet 6 inches, right?
Yep.
It's still 90 feet between the bases. So the game changes, and you have spurts. You have more of a hitter's game, and now it seems like it's returning to more of a pitcher's game. But and I think the tradition is something that is somewhat unique to baseball in the sense that it's remembered, it's passed down, and that's a good thing.
It's recognizable.
Yeah.
It would be recognizable to my uncle, that's for sure. The game would be.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And we had a situation, and it's also a market segmentation challenge, in the sense that at Candlestick, the last 10 years at Candlestick, the normalized average attendance was 1.5 million over the last 10 years. At our new ballpark, really going in, we had a break even at about 3 million, give or take. Okay, so the delta, that's a doubling effect. So the delta's 1.5 million. Where do you find those additional 1.5 million fans a year? It's not going to be people walking down the street memorizing batting averages and ERAs and and being the hardcore avid fans in the segmentation sense. It's going to be the fans, perhaps, that you attract through great food offerings, a beautiful day at the park, a great day out with the family, music, dating, singles nights, furry mascots, exploding scoreboards for the kids, all of that. So that's a casual fan. Now, what we believe can happen, and we see has happened, is that once that fan is there, they can get hooked. And they can fall in love with Buster Posey or Hunter Pence or Pablo Sandoval or Tim Lincecum, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. One last question from me before and I know this is something that you care deeply about, which is Mission Rock.
Yes.
And the tech campus. You want to talk? That'll be of
Sure.
interest to everybody.
So one of the things that we've been asked over the years about the new ballpark is, if you were to do it again, what would you do differently? I say new ballpark, can you believe it's 15 years now? But what would you do differently? And our response, really, the candid response, is we would have bought the property across the street. So now we're buying the property across the street. So what we've done is we have a competitive bid, but we have secured the rights to develop 27 acres. That is our parking lot and the first pier, Pier 48, that's adjoining our ballpark, and then we'll go from surface parking to structured parking at the south end of the lot. And I was thinking about this in coming down here. You talk about economic impact. I'll never forget a gentleman, Nelson Rising, who was chairman and CEO of Catellus, which was the developer of Mission Bay, said the first day of his job, and that's 250 acres, that is the big, long stretch from essentially our ballpark all the way down through UCSF to 16th Street. And he said his first day on his job, he made 2 calls. One was to the Giants, and one was to the Chancellor of UCSF. And he said that we can make this neighborhood vibrant if we give it a sense of place. And the campus, the UCSF campus, and the Giants ballpark can do that. And you look at the development around us, we think it's a great opportunity for us to grow the Giants franchise to the point where we're in the real estate business in a big way. With 27 acres, what we're doing is it's a mixed-use project. We have one, and part of it's the port on the pier, the first pier. We have a deal that we've announced on the pier where we're going to do Anchor Steam Brewery is putting a manufacturing facility there. They're quadrupling the production of Anchor Steam beer on that pier. And then on the main parking lot, 1,200 residential units, about 2 million feet of office, 500,000 feet of retail, give or take, and a big public park, a 6.5-acre park. The office, we believe, is a perfect fit for a campus, most likely a tech campus. And what we hear over and over again is from the tech companies that are largely based here. They're saying that, look, we need presence in San Francisco. We heard on the last panel about recruiting talent, that to recruit talent and to compete with those that are based in San Francisco, we need to have presence in San Francisco. So we're talking to Silicon Valley firms and San Francisco firms about technology, putting technology campus. And the great thing is it can be built from scratch, which is a pretty exciting thing for companies that are in the innovation business. So that's our next big chapter, and ultimately, if it's successful, I mean, it's possible that that development could be valued as highly as the team itself, or more.
Pitch, we need the microphones. We're the microphone dudes. Well, people in the back won't be able to hear Pitch. Hang on. Here it comes.
Here it comes.
I know you can shout.
What do you think of the new rules to speed up the game?
Pitch, it's a good question. I think they're good. I think the thing about the rules, there's nobody that, and when I was a kid, I loved going to games that would go 4, 5, 6 hours if it was extra innings and all that. Everybody respects the way the game's played, but it's the unnecessary breaks. So the two new rules that are being enforced on opening day are when a batter gets in the box, he's got to stay in the box unless there's a wild pitch or there's something, throw to first or whatever, but he has to stay in the box. I mean, how many times do we watch the game and takes a pitch and then he backs out and looks around and checks out the stands, and takes his batting glove off, the Velcro thing, take it off, put it back on. That's not that exciting to people. So it's important. So it's the downtime that's not really filled. But if you have a 14-inning game or a 22-inning game, I think that's a glorious thing. So that rule is dedicated for that. And the other rule is really simple, which is enforcing the time between innings. A lot of times you'll have, it's supposed to be 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but it just slops over. And nobody benefits. So get back, and there's going to be a mechanism, a timing device the umpire will have. And if you're not throwing a pitch or in the box, there'll be penalties.
Yeah, an extra 30 seconds is 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's right, because 30 seconds times 18 breaks.
That's another 20 minutes.
So, yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. So I think they're good, Pitch. Yeah, and we'll speed the game, and we'll get to an average game time. I think the goal is, game times used to be about 2:30, 2:20, 2:30. We're now up close to 3 hours, 2:50. If we can get it down to 2:40, 2:30 to 2:40 average for a 9-inning game, I think it'll be a much better product.
What are some of the best practices you see in football or basketball, or you pick the sport, that you think baseball could do a better job of adopting, or even around the world when you look at how sports content is engaged by the fans?
Well, I think that one thing that baseball has to do a better job of is marketing nationally and internationally their stars. I went on a trip to China, and the Warriors were playing the Lakers, and Kobe Bryant is bigger than any athlete, any Chinese athlete. He's right there with Yao Ming internationally. What happens in baseball, and it's a good thing and a bad thing, I think it's a blessing and a curse. Baseball is the most tribal sport, right? You have 162 games, you hunker down with your team, you get to know the players, the games are played when kids are out of school and when people are off work in the summer. So you get very attached to your team, and you have these great big regional loyalties. I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a Dodger fan, I'm a Cubs fan, the Brands, the Red Sox. And then if your team doesn't get to the postseason, then a lot of times it's click. I'm not going to follow the other teams. But if you create stars, like I think the NBA has done a good job of, create stars that sort of transcend, that you still want to watch some of these guys, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, whomever, LeBron James, even if he's not on your team. And so we've had a lot of discussions about that, and I think Buster Posey has a chance to break out in that way. You look at what he's done so far. In 5 years, he's had 3 world championships, an MVP, a Rookie of the Year, a batting championship, and he's an engaging and good personality, kind of the way Derek Jeter was. So I think we need more. So that's one thing. We need more stars. I think that other aspects. I think that the NBA and NFL selectively, actually the NBA has done a good job, in China. And that's going to be a harder lift for us because the game isn't known as well in China, but it's possible. Went over there. There's beginning to be the seeds planted for that to grow the game there. We've internationally, obviously we're very strong in Japan and very strong in Latin America, Europe. I think there's possibilities, and you don't expect there to be major league teams there, but following the games, the merchandise, and the television, can be powerful. So there's a couple areas that we can go. A couple examples.
Question right here. Seems to be.
Larry, first of all, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
That's pretty impressive, 3 World Series in 5 years. But my question, I'm thrilled to see we're trying to speed up the game. And also, I guess we're testing like a pitch clock. It seems to me that without a pitch clock, everything's helping the pitchers that we're talking about in terms of speeding up the game. And pitch clock would help, but why don't we automate the strike zone? Because automating the strike zone would provide hitters with certainty as to what the strike zone is, and then it stops sort of this grandstanding by umpires, which was great when we grew up, but now they just look foolish when there's this pitch clock up there and the ball's a foot off the plate.
Yeah, it's not a crazy notion. It's been done in tennis to some extent, right, and making calls. And I think that it's not there. There's a lot of traditional aspects to the game that, and I'm not saying I'm in this category, that there are owners and people in the commissioner's office that think you can't give up. One of those traditional aspects is the discretion of the umpire. And even if he gets it wrong, he or she, there should be some she's out there. There's no reason there's not a female umpire. I'm not sure why there isn't. There should be. But if that person gets it wrong, well, that spurs an argument, and so and then you get the in-the-face arguments. One of the things with the instant replay that I miss, quite frankly, is the arguments. The kicking of the dirt, and I'll tell you a quick story about that. Lou Piniella for a while worked for us after he retired as a manager, and he was famous for having the most animated discussions with umpires, arguments with umpires. He'd get in his face, he'd kick dirt, he'd pick up a base and throw a base, and I said to him, so what was really going on there? I asked him, what was really going on there when you were doing all that? And he says, if we lost a few games in a row, or George Steinbrenner saw that we weren't selling tickets, he'd come up to me and he'd say, let's get things going. Let's get tossed and get people excited. We're losing the back page of the New York tabloids to the Mets. Let's do it. So what Lou would do, so you have these home plate ground rules discussions right at the beginning of before the game, and they go out there, and occasionally Lou would say, "Who wants me today? Who wants to toss me? Because I got to get tossed." So you'd have the home plate, and there aren't that many calls at second or third, so it's usually the home plate or the first base guy. And so, and you don't really, there's not a lot of lip reading, you can't really tell. So what would happen is, let's say a close play at first, and it goes against the Yankees, he'd go out there and he'd scream and kick dirt and throw the base and all that. And so, but what's he really saying to the umpire? He said, sometimes he'd say to the umpire, where are you going after the game tonight? You want to have a drink later? So, not much of an argument. So there's showmanship to this. And you can't forget that sometimes you're in a different kind of, so you'd lose that if the whole thing was automated. You can't automate the arguments, right? On the other hand, I miss the argument with the instant replay. Now you're kind of moving in that direction anyway. So it's a good debate, I think, whether to do that or not.
Some people back there had questions also.
Hey, Larry. Could you comment on what they used to say, which you couldn't have a privately funded stadium, which you proved you could, and that if you did, you couldn't have a winning team, which you proved you could. So what are the lessons learned from the economics of a privately funded stadium, and what's your relationship like with those other owners who want to build new stadiums?
Well, thanks. That was a huge part of our lives, really, in the first 10 years of owning the team, was this notion, because what happened was we bought the team in '93, and there had been 4 failed elections under the previous owner, 4 losses to trigger public funding for the ballpark, so to build a ballpark. 2 in San Francisco, 1 in Santa Clara, and 1 in San Jose. So they lost 4 elections. So when we came in and bought the team, we had to figure out a new model. I'll never forget, when we bought the team, one of our owners at the time, I think it was Walter Shorenstein, said, we got good news and we got bad news. The good news is we just bought the team. The bad news is we just bought the team. What the hell do we do now? Because the team was losing a lot of money. It was losing $10, $15 million a year, and it was, and there was just really no way, economic way, no way to make the Giants an economically viable franchise unless you had a new stadium. So we did some research, and we found that, it surprised us a little bit, is that about 75% of the voters absolutely endorsed a new ballpark. They said, get out of Candlestick. You have my vote. We need to get a new ballpark. But then the next question, would you pay for it? 75% of the voters said, heck no. So it led you to the conclusion you do it privately, but that still doesn't mean it can work. And there were a lot of scary moments as we were doing the models before we pushed the button 3 years later in '95. So we were doing the models. And what we basically had to do was we had to, and there were a lot of folks that said, they're just, even if you get it built privately, even if you can get the financing, a lot of people don't think we get the financing, but if you get the financing, it's what you're suggesting in the question, that you'd have so much debt that you'd be unable to field a competitive team. So what happened was, and some of this was fortunate, it was that in the late 90s, there was a strong economy, and we were able to essentially out-revenue the debt overhang. We had basically $20 million of debt on the team that most teams didn't have, because those that had built new ballparks had done it with public funding. Now, the other part of your question about other teams, how they look at us, not highly, not longingly or warmly, because we would get calls, I'll never forget, we got a call from somebody in the Minnesota State Legislature. The Twins wanted a new ballpark. They wanted it public funded, and the response to the legislature is just do it like the Giants are doing it in San Francisco. Do it privately. Same thing in San Diego. I went down, my friend Larry Lucchino was running the Padres at the time, and he asked us to come down and actually testify at a city council hearing as they were trying to get public money to basically say that San Francisco's corporate base allowed us to do this privately, whereas San Diego is a very different corporate profile down there. Although they do have Qualcomm. But,
Yeah, you do, right.
But and so I think that was really kind of the critical decision, was to go ahead and build it privately. And now, amazingly, our debt in 2 years, the debt comes off the stadium in 2017. So it's been a 20-year period starting in '97. But now, and also, more parks are being built privately. Not all, but most, or more are being built at least as a hybrid, 50 or 60% private.
Here and then here, these two questions. So do we have a mic up here somewhere? Yeah. And then,
It seems like our culture has become a lot more sensitive about off-field behavior. In days of yore, there were legendary stories, and now suddenly it's not the same way. And I'm wondering, you have a big investment in some of these assets. How do you protect that investment?
That's a great question. It's really important for us to try to sensitize the players to the fact that everybody they interact with now, everybody has a camera, is walking around with a camera.
yeah, that's great.
And taking a picture. So there's nothing private. You don't go to a club and do something in private. Now, that's actually, I should have said that second to, when you're a representative of the San Francisco Giants, we feel strongly that you have to understand that you're representing us in every possible way. Players in baseball, and some differences with football and basketball, but I don't think really all that many differences. A lot of them haven't had the skills, haven't had certain skills taught to them at home, haven't had certain skills taught to them at school, and so that they come out to, into our organization at age 16 if they're an international player, or 17, 18, if they're drafted out of high school, let's say, and they don't have really the life skills. And so it's incumbent upon us, I believe, it's incumbent upon us to train them and to give them some sensitivity. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not always going to work, but we have a number of different kinds of trainings. Baseball has a domestic violence domestic abuse series of seminars that each organization's gone through now in the minor league camps and in the spring training camps. We have a media training and sort of a social media training, because a lot of the players have gotten into trouble by just posting things, or allowing themselves to be in positions where pictures are taken and they get posted. So all of that. And so we do what we can. I mean, it's really important. As I say, they're wearing San Francisco across their chest, so they're representatives of us and this community and Giants fans everywhere. And so it's critical.
And I think the public perception is changing in a positive way as well. I know that in the old days these things happen and there's boys will be boys kind of thing, but just 2 or 3 days ago, Cincinnati Reds third baseman, single-A third baseman in Goodyear got involved in an incident which I won't describe, and my reaction was, really, these kids really don't get it at this point still? And so, to your point, it's...
And there's hurtful things, I mean, that get posted for no reason other than...
Right.
Fans are out there posting and things. I remember an example of after the first parade in 2010, Pablo Sandoval was at a restaurant with a bunch of friends, Buco de Beppa. Anybody been to Buco de Beppa? Okay, they don't have small portions at Buco de Beppa. It's big portions. And he's like with 20 people, and they brought a cake to celebrate the Giants championship. And they put the cake in front of it, a big, huge, it was called like the chocolate bomb. And they put it in front of Pablo. And Pablo was talking about, going on a diet and reducing his weight. And somebody, just at the next table, a stranger, took a picture, posted it, and with the line, "Nice diet, Pablo." Okay, so that's like a mean-spirited thing that you can't avoid. And you just have to, as players, so the other thing is you have to have a thick skin. And you see these, bar altercations and guys getting in trouble, getting in fights in bars. Some of them are being baited and all that. So I think you got to really use your discretion when you'll have time to go to bars and everything after you're a player. It's probably better if you want to have a party, go to a party at somebody's house.
Be macho with the baseball, not with the guy at the bar.
Yeah.
So back here.
Yeah, interesting. Just on the data side and the growth side, I used to manage a brand business, Machinima, which was on YouTube, and we were international from day one. We would talk to ESPN, and ESPN would say that's their biggest concern is how they're going to grow internationally. And you kind of look at the idea that data, right, is not being embraced by some players, some coaches, and is by others, right? Is there a way to make baseball more open in terms of the way systems are today and technology is today is open source, so everything is open, and seeing how the rest of the world could actually get engaged with baseball and visualize the data in a different way and kind of take into, eHarmony uses data to figure out relationships, so maybe there is a way to actually, we've been thinking about doing that for, employees and employers, right, and stuff like that. So I think there may be different ways to grow it. Just curious on your thought.
No, I think that's happening. That's happening. I mean, we're not all the way there, but we've come a long way, and I think that's, and it's being highly encouraged. There's actually, you'll see on opening day, there are going to be iPads in the dugouts. And so the managers and coaches come in with big binders of statistical information, and they're pouring through it. That's going to be gone. And a lot of teams have proprietary analytics that are really useful. In terms of players, I mean, I think with the players situation, and this has we've come a long way there too, players now between at-bats will go into an area near the dugout and look at their last at-bat against that pitcher. Just call it up and look at where the pitcher's locating. And so that's video data, but it's important. There's a lot of trackers now that are being used to position defenses, as you've seen. So there's all these shifts going on. So I think that's being used. I think we're getting there. Believe it or not, we're getting there. And even the player mentality. And players are not resistant to it really anymore. The other thing on the business side, it's incredibly powerful. I mean, I remember when we opened the ballpark. There's now it's widely accepted, but the secondary market for tickets. And being able to, we had a system called Double Play Ticket Network, which was a precursor to StubHub, where you can sell a ticket twice or 3 times or whatever. Now we're doing dynamic ticket pricing with algorithms. We took equity in a company, University of Texas PhDs, and the ticket prices can change by the hour for future games, like the hotel and airplane model. So it's happening, really happening on the business side, and I think on the baseball side more and more.
Yeah, but
Right.
right.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But statistics show the productivity is way down.
Larry, are differences between the leagues, like the DH rule, are they a good thing, and will we see more? And if so, along what dimensions, or will those differences get narrowed?
That's a good question. I think the new commissioner, is sort of the mind, and I would agree with this, that having the difference is not a problem. It's not a bad thing necessarily. It changes. Having the leagues different. I mean, I think the National League owners are very much traditionalists, or much more traditionalists, and think that it detracts from the strategy to not have the pitcher hit. So what does that mean? Double negative. It means that the pitcher hitting is part of the strategic element of the game. That's my personal opinion. The American League owners and the American League seems to be fine with the DH. The union likes the DH because it's a good thing for employment. Because that 24th or 25th guy might be a player that otherwise would be retired because he's hitting and he's not playing in the field. So I think we're going to probably be staying. The leagues otherwise, but for the DH, aren't that different. The rules really aren't that different. Now, having the DH makes pitching different a little bit in the National League and American League, but I think it's something to celebrate a little bit. And I don't think it's a big deal in the World Series having pitchers hit for in the National League parks and not in the American League parks. I think that's fine.
There was one other person back there, another question.
Larry, Paul Perez, I just wanted to ask you, we were talking about economic impact, and I'm frankly delighted but shocked that you got the Lot A and the Pier 48 stuff through the city and the anti-development people. Could you shed a little bit of light on that?
Well, yeah, where is Paul? Oh, right there. Well, yeah, now I should be clear, we still have some entitlement work to do, but we're pretty far down the road. The Board of Supervisors have voted unanimously to endorse our term sheet. And we actually now, with the latest development politics in San Francisco, will most likely be going to an election on it. We may or may not have to do it, but we think it's the right thing to do, and that'll sort of insulate us from anything further. I think that there's certain aspects, elements in development in San Francisco especially, but really the Bay Area, but especially San Francisco, that you have to be mindful as a developer, you have to include. I mean, the very first thing, you have to talk to the community. We've lived in this community now by the ballpark for 15 years, really took over the park 18 years ago and opened 15 years ago. So we kind of know the community interests, and then we weave them in. And I think that when that happens, you can get a good result. And I don't think San Francisco is as tough as everybody makes it out to be. We got the ballpark built, and we believe we'll get this development going. The two things that I think will characterize this development will be affordable housing. Housing's at a crisis level in San Francisco, especially affordable housing. So we've pledged of all the residential units, we're going to be talking about doing about a third affordable housing. And the other thing is open space. And I mentioned the 6.5-acre park. So those two elements I think are going to be pretty attractive and have been pretty attractive to the community people we've been talking to. But it's hard to come in from out of town, be an out-of-town developer, and make your mark in San Francisco, because there's a lot of nuance to it.
Just between us, off the record, one last question. Barry Bonds, Hall of Fame.
What's the question?
That's the question. Do you feel, okay, you're going to force me to do it. Do you feel that Barry Bonds should be elected in the Hall of Fame?
Personally, I do. I think that, and will he? I think it's going to take a while, probably. I don't think that's right. Personally, I do, because, look, it's been shown with the Mitchell report and everywhere else that not only was Barry not the only one doing it, but doing whatever he did, if he did it, I should say that. that the Mitchell report is saying that the majority of players were doing things. So we've gotten to a point now where you've got to look at where Barry was before the allegations. You got to look at where Barry's statistical record was throughout his career, which was a 17-year career, and it's just hard to argue against it. And so we'll see. They're elected by sports writers.
Right. The election process.
And there's nothing wrong with sports writers, but the sports writers are going to have, they watch every game and they're entitled to their views. So it's going to be a process.
If, in my opinion, if Barry Bonds if he did do what some people think he did, even if he had retired the day he's accused of starting it, he was the first ballot Hall of Famer on that day. Right. So
that's a compelling argument.
Right. So
thank you for making that.
You're welcome. The 2016 world champion Giants.
We're not flushing 2015 just because it's an odd year.
One of the things that comes through at this conference year after year after year is that the cultural tone starts at the top of every organization or every business, and you described passion, and it comes through at the top.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you.